At 11:50 p.m. on September 23, 2018, Samantha Keithley sent a desperate text to her best friend. Kirk has lost his mind.
I didn't open it until around 2 a.m. and then I texted her back this morning around 7, and it was too late.
In another text to her friend, Samantha wrote, "I just chucked my ring outside."
Kirk was a quiet person. When he drank, he came a little bit more alive, which was nice. He was a little bit more introverted, but I never suspected anything like this would ever happen.
Just over an hour later, the mother of 4 would be dead, killed by the very person sworn to protect and serve. 33-year-old Samantha Keithley was living what many would consider a dream life. She was raising 4 children in a beautiful home in Land O'Lakes, Florida, balancing 2 successful careers while her husband Kirk served as a respected Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputy. The 2-story cream-colored house on Terrazzo Way cost $322,000 and represented everything the American dream promised: safety, stability, and success. But Samantha's path to this life had been anything but easy. Born on December 29, 1984, in Fayetteville, North Carolina, her early life was marked by both tragedy and resilience. When she was just 16 years old, her mother died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Rather than crumble under the weight of grief, Samantha stepped up to become the glue that held her family together. Her younger brother, Taylor Sterling, would later say that losing their mother at such a young age brought them closer. She was always there for him, becoming a mother figure when he needed one most. This early responsibility shaped Samantha into someone who instinctively protected and cared for others, even when she herself was struggling. The family moved to Brandon, Florida, where Samantha attended Bloomingdale High School. It was there she met Kristen Kellen, who would become her lifelong best friend. The two graduated together in 2003, their bond forged through shared teenage experiences and Samantha's infectious personality. By September 2018, Samantha was successfully juggling 2 demanding careers while raising 4 children. She had worked at the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Tampa for over a decade, recently earning a promotion to assistant manager. The casino had become like a second home to her. She knew the business inside and out, and her colleagues respected her dedication and work ethic. President Joe Lupo would later say that Sam was part of their Hard Rock family for over 10 years and was truly loved by all who knew her. But Samantha wasn't content to rest on her laurels. She had also studied nursing and was exploring her entrepreneurial side through real estate. Despite having no formal training in property, she had recently joined Keller Williams Realty in Lakeland and was already showing promise in her new field. Her real estate team leader noted she had a focus for higher-end listings, and in the short time she was there, she was doing extremely well in the Tampa Bay area. Those who knew her marveled at how she managed it all: the early mornings at the casino, the late nights studying real estate law, the school runs, the packed lunches, the homework help. Somehow she made it all look effortless. But more than that, she made sure everyone around her felt loved and supported. At her funeral, Rose Sinria would share how Samantha had helped her escape an abusive relationship. Sam used to tell her that she was better than that so many people loved her, that she wasn't alone and needed to get out. Even in life, Samantha was protecting others from the very fate that would ultimately claim her.
And my sister was the type that if there was something, threatening to her or her children, she would have definitely left the situation.
Kirk Keithley seemed to be the steady, dependable law enforcement professional that any family would want as their protector. He had been a Hillsborough County Sheriff's deputy since June 15, 2009, with previous experience at the St. Petersburg Police Department from 2003 to 2009. His career appeared solid, if unremarkable. Nearly 2 decades in law enforcement with no major incidents. However, subtle warning signs existed that family members would later recognize with painful clarity. Samantha's relatives described Kirk as someone who acted like he was better than other people and was stingy with conversation during family gatherings. Brother Taylor Sterling said that at family dinners, Kirk would give in-laws the idea that he didn't want to get to know them. His professional record, while not disqualifying, showed concerning patterns. In 2016, he received a reprimand for misuse of communications facilities. In 2011, he got a letter of counseling for an avoidable traffic crash. More telling was a 2008 evaluation at St. Petersburg Police Department that noted his austere demeanor and recommended interpersonal skills training. The word austere is particularly significant in law enforcement evaluations. It suggests someone who is cold, distant, and lacking in the interpersonal warmth that effective policing requires. That this was noted by supervisors and deemed worthy of additional training suggests Kirk's difficulties with human connection were apparent to those who worked with him professionally. Despite these concerns, there was no documented history of domestic violence calls to their residence. Even those closest to the couple saw nothing that suggested Samantha was in immediate danger. This is often the case in domestic violence situations involving law enforcement. The perpetrator knows exactly how to avoid official scrutiny while maintaining control behind closed doors. Their neighbors told a different story, one that revealed the subtle ways domestic control can manifest. Ken Griffith had lived across the street from the Keithleys for 5 years before they moved to Land O'Lakes in February 2018. Griffith described himself as the mayor of the neighborhood because he made it his business to know everybody. But there was one person he could never crack: Kirk Keithley. She was very friendly to me unless Kirk was around. Then she would just say hello or wave, Griffith said. This detail is particularly chilling in retrospect. It suggests that Samantha may have learned to modulate her behavior based on Kirk's presence, a common pattern in controlling relationships. Griffith tried repeatedly to get Kirk to open up, even introducing him to another deputy from Georgia, hoping that the shared profession might create a connection. Kirk just turned his back and ignored them. This social isolation is another red flag in domestic violence situations. Abusers often work to isolate their victims from potential support networks, making it harder for them to seek help or maintain relationships that might provide perspective on their situation. Law enforcement officers are statistically more likely to commit domestic violence than the general population, and when they do, the consequences are often fatal. Officers know how to avoid leaving evidence. They understand how investigations work, and their victims often fear that reporting abuse will be ineffective when the perpetrator's colleagues are the ones who would respond to the call. September 23, 2018. The evening began like many others, but tensions escalated rapidly in the Keithley household. Samantha was feeling sick, a simple illness that should have elicited sympathy and care from her husband. Instead, it became the catalyst for 6 hours of harassment that would end in tragedy. Samantha had asked Kirk repeatedly to leave her alone because she was unwell. This simple request for space to rest when she wasn't feeling well should have been respected by any caring partner. Instead, Kirk became increasingly agitated and aggressive. The argument stretched on for hours, with Kirk's behavior becoming more erratic as his intoxication increased. What exactly triggered Kirk's rage that night may never be fully known. Was it stress from work, financial pressures, jealousy over Samantha's growing success in real estate, or simply the toxic combination of alcohol, drugs, and a controlling personality finally reaching a breaking point? Domestic violence experts know that the most dangerous time for a victim is often when they're trying to leave or assert independence. Samantha's growing success in real estate may have represented exactly that kind of threat to Kirk's control. The situation deteriorated so severely that Samantha made the decision to leave temporarily. She went to a hotel. This detail is particularly significant because it shows that Samantha recognized the danger she was in and took steps to protect herself. Leaving for a hotel was likely her way of de-escalating the situation and giving Kirk time to calm down. It was a reasonable response to an unreasonable situation. But tragically, Samantha made the fatal decision to return home. Perhaps she thought Kirk had calmed down. Perhaps she was worried about the children. Perhaps she felt she had nowhere else to go. Whatever her reasoning, this decision would cost her life. The fact that she returned suggests she may not have fully grasped the extent of the danger she was in. This is common in domestic violence situations. Victims often minimize the threat because they can't imagine their partner would actually kill them. At 11:50 p.m., Samantha sent those desperate final text messages to Kristen Kellen. "Kirk has lost his mind, Kristen. He's literally losing it. He's been harassing me for the last 6 hours, and I've asked him repeatedly to just leave me alone because I'm sick." These messages paint a clear picture of a woman in distress, trying to get help from her closest friend. The phrase "Kirk has lost his mind" suggests that this level of behavior was unusual, even for their troubled relationship. In a particularly telling detail, she added, "I just chucked my ring outside," referring to her wedding ring, a symbolic gesture of the marriage's complete breakdown. Throwing away her wedding ring was Samantha's way of signaling that the relationship was over. It was an act of defiance that may have further enraged Kirk. The timing of these messages is crucial. At 11:50 p.m., Samantha was still alive and able to communicate with her friend. Just over an hour later, she would be dead. Kellen wouldn't see these messages until 2 a.m., too late to help. The guilt that Kellen must feel, knowing that her best friend's final messages went unread for hours, is unimaginable. Around midnight on September 24, 2018, Kirk shot Samantha while she sat on the downstairs couch. The fact that Samantha was sitting on the couch suggests she may not have seen the attack coming. Perhaps she thought Kirk had finally calmed down. Perhaps she was simply exhausted from the 6 hours of harassment and had let her guard down. Whatever the case, Kirk took advantage of her vulnerability to carry out his final act of control. After shooting Samantha, Kirk went upstairs and turned the gun on himself. 4 children were present in the home during this nightmare scenario, and they would be forever traumatized by what they witnessed and heard. The toxicology report would later reveal just how impaired Kirk was on the night he killed Samantha. With a blood alcohol content of 0.156, nearly twice Florida's legal limit, and oxycodone in his system, he was in no condition to make rational decisions. The mix of these depressants can dangerously impair judgment, heighten aggression, and push risky behavior to deadly extremes. However, as Samantha's uncle, Ted Friley, would later say, alcohol and those pills don't explain anything. It's all on Kirk. It doesn't take away any of the pain. It doesn't justify anything. 14-year-old Mark Price showed extraordinary courage in the face of unthinkable horror. When he heard the gunshot and discovered his mother's body, he didn't freeze or panic. Instead, he took action that would save his younger siblings and bring help to the scene. Mark crawled under the garage door to escape, a detail that speaks to his presence of mind even in the midst of trauma. He then made the crucial 911 call that would alert authorities to the tragedy. His words captured the horror of what he had witnessed, but also showed remarkable composure for someone so young facing such a nightmare. "My mom's been shot. My mom's been shot. Oh my God, my stepdad just shot my mom in the head," he said through sobs. Despite his emotional state, Mark was able to provide critical information to the dispatcher. "My stepdad and mom had been arguing for a night, and she went to a hotel and she came back and I heard them arguing and I heard a gunshot and I walked outside and she was bloody and I saw her dead." The matter-of-fact way Mark describes finding his mother's body, "She was bloody and I saw her dead," is heartbreaking. No child should ever have to see their parent in such a state, let alone describe it to a 911 dispatcher. When the dispatcher asked him to describe his stepfather, Mark cried out again, "He just shot my mom in the head. My stepdad shot my mom in the head." The repetition of this phrase suggests he was struggling to process what had happened. The mind often repeats traumatic information as it tries to make sense of something incomprehensible. Then the line went dead. For several terrifying minutes, dispatchers tried calling back to no avail. They had no way of knowing if Mark was safe or if Kirk was still a threat to the children. Finally, Mark called back, explaining that his phone had stopped working. By this time, a friend's father had taken over the call, telling the dispatcher that Mark was with him and having a hard time. He noted that 2 young stepsisters were right in front of the house. This detail provides some relief. The other children were safe and in the care of neighbors. When Pasco County deputies arrived at the scene after midnight, they found a crime scene that would haunt them for years to come. Samantha's body was on the couch with a fatal gunshot wound. Upstairs, Kirk's body was discovered with an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. All 4 children were found safe but deeply traumatized. Pasco County Sheriff Chris Nocco said it was devastating what happened that morning. The moment that any individual goes from protecting people to harming people, he loses the right, no matter what agency they're with, to call themselves a law enforcement officer. Just 3 months later, the crisis deepened with Deputy Terry Strawn. Unlike Kirk, Strawn was a highly respected veteran with no disciplinary issues, recently rehired as a school resource officer. Yet on December 19, 2018, he killed his wife, granddaughter, and daughter before taking his own life, announcing each step over the police radio. The contrast between Kirk and Strawn was stark. One acted in a drunken rage, the other with calm precision. But both were decorated officers. Both left families shattered. and both revealed how little warning colleagues saw. Strawn's case was particularly devastating, not only for his sterling reputation, but because his granddaughter was a student at the very school he was meant to protect. Together, the two cases underscored the dangers of domestic violence within law enforcement families and the failure of available mental health resources, programs officers rarely used due to stigma. The twin tragedies led to comprehensive reforms, mandatory suicide prevention training, cultural changes to reduce stigma around seeking help, a full-time psychologist, emotional support dogs, chaplain programs, and a behavioral resources unit. Sheriff Chad Chronister acknowledged that mental health issues don't discriminate. It's not a sign of weakness to say you're having a difficult time. The tragedy sent shockwaves through multiple communities. The real estate community rallied immediately. Within 24 hours, her colleagues organized a GoFundMe campaign that ultimately raised nearly $80,000 for the 4 children. The children were placed in the care of Samantha's father, and the community's overwhelming financial support provided a foundation for their future needs. On October 2, 2018, hundreds filled Bell Shoals Baptist Church in Brandon. Samantha's uncle, Ted Friley, delivered the defining statement about how she should be remembered. "When you tell this story, and we want you to tell it, don't boil it down to her last few minutes. That's not what her life was about. To do so would be skipping over the 18 million other minutes. 33 years of an incredible story with highs, lows, joys, and sadness, love, and most importantly, her children. For 33 years, Samantha embodied extraordinary strength, love, and service to others. She stepped into a maternal role at 16, balanced multiple careers while raising 4 children, and helped friends escape dangerous relationships. Her death catalyzed meaningful changes that have potentially saved other families from similar tragedies. The 4 children she loved so dearly carry forward her legacy. Mark's courage in calling 911 showed the same protective instinct that had driven Samantha throughout her life. In death, as in life, Samantha Keithley continues to protect others through the reforms implemented because of her case. When we remember Samantha, it shouldn't be for the cruelty of what happened, but for the light that she carried. Her story reminds us that domestic violence can hide behind any door, even those protected by badges. It reminds us that success and strength don't immunize victims from abuse, and it reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous moment is when someone finally decides to leave. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, help is available. Contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you're having thoughts of suicide, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You are not alone.